movies for black girl nerds.
Thank you guys for your time. I really, really enjoyed the comedy and the spookiness of this show. It's super duper fun.
Thank you.
Beginning with you, Courtney, the Shining Vale is interesting in that the family has moved here for Pat to finish her book, and there's all these angsty things happening in the family's relationships, husband, wife, the kids, mom, daughter, and mental illness, exploring all these different things. So would you say, is the Shining Vale a catalyst for these discussions to happen? What role does the house itself play into initiating all these conversations with each other that they couldn't have before?
Well, I think that house was supposed to be a place where they could come together and have the space to do that. Instead, it brought out, it just was a mirror of the fact that the house is huge. And before she realizes what she does pretty quick, it's haunted, but it's haunted by somebody with such a deep past, which as the series unfolds, you'll find that out. But there's so many things to play, but I think the house being so huge, so empty, so scary, it brings up so much in her life. And you can't run from your problems. I think Greg said this earlier today. You can't run from your problems will find you. And they certainly do in this house.
They definitely do. Greg, for Terry, he's so sweet. He just wants his family together. He wants to make money and just live this best life with his wife and children. But with their relationship and how they communicate, they don't always communicate the best. What do you think is the barrier between particularly Terry and Pat's? I mean, we know that something has happened in the marriage that people will find out. Are there other barriers besides that's keeping them from communicating?
Yeah, first, trust. Trust is a little bit of a problem with Pat. But I also think that, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like Terry has been trying to will this marriage together and this family together for so long that he's kind of lost touch with who he is. And I feel like in this series, he's trying to find the building blocks in addition to dealing with his wife, who's either dealing with a mental illness or maybe just the end of marriageitis. He's trying to find these little building blocks for himself and kind of make himself better, and try and fix himself. And I don't think he kind of knows what to do. So he's flailing around. It's great fun to play. He's desperately optimistic. And I feel like he makes a lot of bad choices. And they're not choices I would make because I make all the right choices. But he's struggling.
And lastly, in the midst of all these serious topics, the comedy is a great vehicle to start these conversations. Courtney, why do you think comedy makes for a great vehicle to have these sort of serious conversations?
I think that's what makes comedy work, is when there are, when you're writing the line between appropriate and inappropriate, serious and not serious. I think that's the part of comedy I love the most, when you can, take something real. That's a part of, Terry doesn't really listen to Pat. And I think that brings a lot of comedy because she's serious and he won't, he's like, so that makes for a funny relationship because he just doesn't believe her. And that's so infuriating. It's kind of that we've seen that kind of comedy over years, but not played in the realistic way that this is, I think.
I enjoyed the both of you. I have a teenage daughter myself, and this was right up my alley. So thank you so much.
Don't you relate to that? It's the first time I've seen a mom be the way you would.
Yeah. My mom, my daughter. Yeah. I have the whole shebang going on. Thank you so much, you guys. I really enjoyed you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Mira, it is a pleasure to see you. You are one of my favorite characters on this show. I love Rosemary.
Thank you. I loved playing her.
The Shining Vale introduces us to so many interesting things and characters and things that are happening. And Rosemary is one of the inhabitants of this house. Without saying, I don't want to give away exactly what she means to the family, to the Phelps family, and what she's a catalyst for. But instead, I'll ask you about playing a character like this, where we're not sure why she's there. She has this wonderfully vintage look, and she's desirous of freedom of sorts. So, what would you say about Rosemary?
Well, I had to play her, 100% like real, no matter what she is, how you categorize her, whether real, a figment, a spirit. So for me, and for me, there's actually two Rosemarys, because there was a real historical Rosemary that lived in the house many, many years ago. And we get to know her as we go along. And that was a somewhat repressed housewife who is not having a good life, whose husband was abusive and neglectful and controlling. And she really felt like completely unheard, unseen, like activated, like her dreams and her thoughts just lay inside her fallow. They never got to come out. And then we see Rosemary as we meet her in our version of the story in the house. And she's much larger than life. And she's kind of patterned herself after these 1950s movie heroines that she loves. So she's kind of her own alter ego. She's like what Rosemary wished she could be. Now, Rosemary, as she presents herself to Pat, is fabulous and daring and the hostess with the mostest, and let's live life. Let's grab it by the balls and go, and so she has this sort of that 50s patois. Like, I don't know if anyone actually spoke like that in the 50s, but a lot of movie actresses did, So she's talking like that, and she's dressing herself in these beautiful clothes with this glamorous hairstyle and gloves and cigarette lighters and, holders and stuff. But she's really like, she's offering a way of life that is like heightened. And she's trying to appeal to Pat's longing for something beyond what she's experiencing right now. Like Pat, played by Courteney, is sort of unhappy right now in her life. She's in this sort of midlife crisis in a way, like of who is she? What does she want? Is she mattering? And is she actualizing her own life? Is she really the captain of her boat? Like, where is she now? And she's looking down the barrel of the rest of her life, the rest of her marriage. Where is it going? And she's, and I think a lot of women can relate to this, especially if they feel like society has told them that once they've gone past a certain date, that they're no longer as relevant, that they're now sort of, it's past your time, I was reading on Instagram the other day, a woman I admire so much was talking about how she knows all these women who are just being fired for being over 50. Like top of their game, like had been meaningfully contributing to whatever organization they were with and just being let go because, the company wants like younger, fresher blood. And it's very weird, and I think Paulina Porskova has been doing all this stuff with her Instagram and with the cover of, there was I think it was an LA magazine about, the Greys, this new generation of like powerful people over 50 saying, we're not going anywhere, we're here and we're relevant, and we matter. And I think anyone, male or female, when they get to the second half of their life, they're going to question them, they're going to think about mortality. They're going to think about what legacy am I leaving? Where am I going? Am I happy? And so regardless of society or anything, you're going to have this introspective moment of like, is this really where I thought I was going to be and what I want to be doing? And Rosemary is that voice saying, you can be so much more than you're allowing yourself to be. Come join me. Why are you allowing these shackles to confine you? You need to be everything you can be, and challenging her to be sort of naughty, because it is a comedy, and to be more sexual and to be, just sort of going for the gusto. And I think that really appeals to Pat just as much as she's sort of afraid of it. I think she also wants that. And then, she and Rosemary form this sort of alliance where they're kind of working together to create a really exciting life for the protagonist of Pat's book. But then the lines start getting blurred between the protagonist in the book, and Rosemary the spirit, and Pat the person, and they all start like they're mixing together in terms of the shenanigans that are to follow. So I don't know, I love it. I just think they did such a deft job of mixing real life themes with humor, a lot of humor, really deft and funny situational and relational humor, and then all these horror tropes, which are really great to exploit. So much fun for me.
I loved it. They're wrapping me, but I want to say I receive all that. I can relate with the mother-daughter dynamics, the over a certain age, working in journalism, the grays starting to appear. So I loved it, and I loved you in it. I totally could relate to all those kind of things and wanting to be free. And this is the second half, and it's going to be better. So I thank you for your time. Wonderful performance, and it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Hi, you guys. Thank you for your time this morning. This is such an interesting, creepy, it has so many cool elements to the show, and I really liked it. Gus, beginning with you for Gaynor, we meet her, and she's a, let's say, mature teen. She has some life experience as a young lady, but this house and the people around her start to change. What do you think is the creepiest element about this house and how it affects Gaynor during their journey this season?
Oh, wow. It's weird. I think Gaynor almost doesn't realize what's going on because she is so kind of self-involved with this. I think she's at a period of her life where she wants to make some changes and change the kind of person she is. And I think she's unaware of this like huge, massive psychological horror going on around her. And so I think as the show goes on, it kind of creeps into her psyche, but honestly, it's really her family's dynamic. That's, I think, the thing that's freaking her out the most, more than the house ever does.
For sure. Dylan, for you, everybody else has these reactions to living there and moving to a new town after living in a city, but it might be kind of a good thing for Jay. Is it a good thing for him to live at the Shining Vale and all these freaky things that are going on there?
With Jake and how he is so like easygoing and sort of just like wrapped up in like his own business. You could put Jake on the moon and he would acclimate. Like he doesn't need the human interaction to survive. He is very much able to just be himself wherever he goes and like have his interests and stuff, and he has his hobbies and he can make friends, but his friends are just sort of, if he has friends, that's great. If he doesn't care. He loves what he does.
Mm-hmm. Back over to you guys. Some of the funniest parts of the show to me are just the exchanges between you and Courteney, Courtney's character, Pat. My goodness. It's like, when you have your teenage angst and all the things you want to say to your mom, I feel like you were giving voice to them. Some of those scenes are really, really epic. When you and Courteney got together, how did you discuss like the energy of them with each other? Because you guys are just, like a tennis match, bounce back and forth with each other.
Thank you for saying that. No, it was really important to me when establishing this relationship that it wasn't just like one thing, because we've definitely seen the mother-daughter screaming at each other dynamic. So I think it was important to Courteney and I to like have it be layered, but also she has the most amazing work ethic, and she comes in and she's just like, she can say a line 10 different ways and every way is funny. And I honestly think it was just watching her and bouncing off of her, and she would feed me so many different things and options. And so it just kept me very alive. But I love their relationship, and I can't wait to see where it goes, and for the audience to see where it goes.
Same here. And Dylan, you tickled me to death when they discovered that you find some interesting magazines back in the treehouse, because I had a similar childhood experience where there were a bunch of them in the back of a relative's garage. And what were those scenes like with you and Greg? Because I lost it with you and Greg in that scene in the car.
It's funny that you mentioned that scene. That is probably my favorite scene in the show. It was just so fun to film with Greg and just like bounce off. And I feel like it's just like the apex of both characters in that moment, where like Terry is just trying his best to like make this like a moment with his son. Like there's like an actual like connection there, and Jake just wants to get away from it all. And I feel like it's just like such a good scene that shows their characters. That was an amazing scene to film. Ah, gosh, I love it.
I loved it too. You guys are really fun. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Have a great season, and I can't wait to see the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judith, I am such a fan of yours. I'm so hyped to talk to you today. I've loved you for a long time.
Oh, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And thank
Oh.
you for Joan. Joan
How
Joan
about
is
her?
Joan is something else. I thought about my own mother relationship, my own daughter relationship, and I could relate to a lot of the energy that they have going on between each other. So when I look at Joan, I think about the relationship between women and what that means in between the generations. What do you think is the biggest conflict? We learn about what strained the relationship with Courteney Cox's Pat character, but what do you think is the biggest strainer of relationships between grandmothers, mothers, and daughters?
Oh, it's such a good question, and the show deals with it beautifully. So one of the major issues of the show, along with women and aging, and women and mental illness, and one of the biggest strains, I think, is that a daughter doesn't want to be like her mother. It's like, don't we often say, "Oh my God, I sound like my mother. I don't want to be my mother," and that puts a real strain in there. And also with Joan's mental illness, that's another conflict between the mother and the daughter, between Courteney and myself. And what does it mean to have a mother who has, is on lithium all the time? What does that mean? How do you relate? What does it mean that the grandmother relates better to to her granddaughter than the mother does? And that's another conflict. But when you have people as great as Courteney Cox, and when you have somebody as wonderful as Birney, to be able to do that, you get to see the dynamics of all of that relating, which is so beautifully written, and which I'm really one of the reasons that I wanted to do the show.
For sure. I love that your character, your Joan, and Gus's character, Gaynor, even look more alike than Courteney. Courteney has her dark hair, and the two of you are blonde on either side of you, and you're trying to create this kind of, we have team us, and we're going to leave Courteney out of the picture. But even in the midst of these serious topics, there are a lot of fun comedic elements and punchlines with it. Why do you think comedy is a great vehicle for sort of communicating these serious messages?
Oh, God, you're so good. This is so great. You let the air out of the balloon. You give people a place to breathe. It's tense, and the show is horror and drama and women as we age, as I said, and mental illness, and all of a sudden the comedy comes in and gives the audience a chance to breathe, gives us a chance to breathe, gives us a place to lighten up on something that could become so dour and so untenable and unworkable to work on or work with, and a lot of people, the underbelly of our lives and our world, I think, has been seen so much more under a magnifying glass during COVID, that there is a lot of conflict and pain and mental illness that goes on that we don't ever talk about. And when you get a show like this, and you get a chance to talk about it, and you get a chance to show it within a lighter frame in many cases, all of a sudden it makes it easier to talk about. Because most of the time we say, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not talking about that. That feels awful to me. And in something like this, you go, wait a minute, I think I can talk about it. I think it's going to be okay. And I think that's due to the writing and the producing of the show.
It's great. Well, Jude, like I said, I've loved you a long time, and I'm still mad at how they killed you off on Law and Order SVU, but
maybe they didn't kill me off.
Maybe not. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, love. Good to see you.
You too. Hi, guys. I'm glad we all got the blue email so we could coordinate with each other today.
No.
I was told that's the
so
only color that
good.
works on me. Sharon, anything, and you're crushing it with the blue.
Oh, thank you. It's a dream. And this show is crushing it. I like anything that takes like kind of spooky tenets and incorporates some humor because, all scariness is not always so, I'm a faint. And this show, Shining Vale, does that well. Beginning with you, Jeff, I love the element. There's like some vintage elements, some modern touches. You have relationships that are being repaired. How do you begin to shape all of these ideas into one series? Because although there's some serious topics, there's a lot of fun along the way.
So it started as I've only done comedy before, and the lore of the show is that Sharon wanted to do a comedy that was a horror that could make you scared, and she said, "Can you do it?" And I noted that yes, because after a horror movie, when you scream, you laugh. So I was like, okay, it's part of the same kind of continuum. And for me, like, I think it's what makes comedy, and I'm sure Sharon's the master of this. What makes comedy great is, or better, or easier to write at least, is stakes. And the stakes that, like, literally the stakes are this woman's soul. And also, like, on a smaller level, it's the stakes of keeping a family together. And I've been blessed to have a lot of mental illness in my family, and you see what that does. It's created two showrunners in my family, sadly. And so, like, once you have the stakes in there, then there's a built-in tension, and then the comedy comes easy, and then it's a matter of like filming it and setting up a horror, and the mental illness also is a great element because everything's explainable either way. And you find with a lot of these movies, like, especially like kind of like horror movies with women, it's like people don't, and I've looked up done a lot of research on women's health. People rarely take women seriously in these things, like historically. And so that creates a tension as an audience that you're watching this person go through this. So
for sure,
it didn't answer your fun question, but it gave us a good framework for it.
But I love it. It gave me some insight because I do like that women are leading. We have Greg and we have the other young man who plays the son in the show. But Sharon, for you, I love these angsty relationships between mothers and daughters because those relationships are complicated. Why do you think that? Why did you guys choose that as a vehicle to really advance these characters and them moving on and moving away and having different issues and coming to terms with sexuality? There's like a lot of angsty things that are tied between these mother-daughter relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really got to write about that before. And I mean, I sort of steered away from it because I have a teenage daughter myself and she would kill me. But it's like Jeff was saying earlier, when I think the second time you met Courtney about this project, she had her teenage daughter with her, and there's something about having a teenage daughter that makes you feel like you're losing your fucking marbles. Like, there's nothing more terrible and frustrating, but also that there's like deep love and the scares on a sort of daily level that you experience having a daughter of that age in this current climate as well. I mean, it couldn't be any better. And, so it was great to, to get to write about that, but also for Courtney to get to play that through Pat. I mean, that's why, she's got a brilliant relationship with her kid.
Yeah, she does. We all should.
They get on great, but like, she could really bring a lot of her own, personal sort of experience to that. It's very real and it's very funny.
Sharon and I talked about that in the beginning, like when we were casting, we were like, we should really cast a mother because nobody knows that torture and that horror, like even more than a father does. And I know, and I think so that was it. And also the woman Gus playing Gaynor just was so fantastic and had she was just such a good counterpoint to Pat. And it was really,
I loved it. I love the tennis match between, I too have a teenage daughter, so I was into it. I thank you. That is my time. I really love the show. I can't wait to see the rest of it. And I appreciate you talking to me.
Thanks, JEANDRA.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Better shake your booties for better shake your booties for black girl nerve.